Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. In today's video, I thought I would give you guys some tips and some top 10 tips on accounting, things that I wish I knew when I started my Amazon FBA journey with accounting. So, as you know, a little bit of a disclaimer: I'm not an accountant myself. I'm not a tax expert or anything like that. No qualifications in that case. That's why I've brought Timer here from Awesome, who is a senior accountant at Awesome Accounting, on the call with me, so that he can just sort of back up things that I say, just to make sure that I'm correct, and B, if Timer wants to add anything himself. So yeah, welcome to the call, Timer.
Thank you, Aidan. Happy to be here.
No, it's going to be good. So yeah, everyone, what I thought I'd do is just go through some top 10 tips. So make sure that I really do believe, honestly, that if you listen to these top 10 tips, they will significantly help you, possibly save you a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of stress if you actually listen to them. So I would say go get a cup of coffee, go get a cup of tea, take the time to watch this whole video through, fully understand it, and actually take some action in terms of what I say in this video, in terms of keeping your accounts filed nicely so that you don't get overwhelmed at the end of the year and, as I say, lose money and time. So without further ado, I thought we would dive straight into accounting tip number one. So accounting tip number one, create a purchase tracker for absolutely everything that you purchase. So I'll let Timer take over in a minute on this one, but this is what I did right from day one. So I remember my very, very first purchase, which is really exciting. It was an online arbitrage purchase for Amazon FBA. And I made sure that I had columns on a spreadsheet. You can do this just with Google Sheets or Excel, something like that. Make sure you've got the ASIN, you've got the product title, you've got the retailer you purchased from. Get the order number in there as well. And if you can, then attach the receipt to that purchase tracker. Or I'll cover this later on putting it into a Google Drive. This to me is absolutely paramount. It's very, very important as a very, very basic level accounting tip, because you simply need to know what's coming in. You need to know what you've bought, and if there's any issues at the end of the year, then you can use the purchase tracker to tally up with any receipts that you've got or receipts you haven't got. So, Tom, I don't know what you think about that, but I think that's a very important thing to do.
It's probably one of the best tips to start with, because look, you need to keep a track of what you're spending. So you can miss transactions on your bank account. If you're not using the same bank account, you can miss transactions, by losing your invoices. And if you miss those, you miss the opportunity to claim corporation tax and VAT on it. So if you have everything in place and systematically organized, then that's the best thing to start. And you always start a business with purchases. So having a purchase tracker will only help you to understand your business and your direction.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. So, guys, if there's one thing I would want you to do after this call, is literally go away and make a purchase tracker. It can take 5 minutes, or try and get a template from one of the groups or something like that for free. It's all free. Try and just try and set it up as soon as possible, I would say, before you even make your first purchase. So that's tip number one. Now, tip number two is just to not overthink things. Don't overthink things. Don't over worry about your first year in accounting, because I know it can be overwhelming. I've had businesses since I was 19, so years ago. So I'm sort of a bit more used to it now, but I did find it very overwhelming to start with. Having said that, although don't get too overwhelmed, don't worry about it too much. That doesn't mean forget about it. It doesn't mean forget about it. You definitely need to put some work in so that you're organized, but just know that it's not like, you're going to get a massive fine or go to prison or anything like that at the end of your first year if not everything is filed. You do have time, or your accountant has time to file all this stuff. It's not going to happen straight away. You're not going to get any massive fines overnight. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to touch on there. Is there anything you want to say on that one, Timer?
I agree to that. Look, when you're running a business, there are deadlines, right? And sometimes the deadlines could seem really daunting or overwhelming. But as you said, the government gives you a lot of time. Like when your year ends, you have 9 months after that to do your corporation tax payments and account submission. So that 9 months give you a bit of a time. But then there are some things like payroll and stuff which has to be done on spot. But if you get to the payroll stage, you already know your business in depth. So as you said, the first tip was to keep a track of everything, especially purchases. The second tip, as you mentioned, Be not stressed out about things. Things will flow within. So as long as you're tracking your stuff, just everything will fall into place on its own.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So don't get overwhelmed, but don't ignore it at the same time. Tip number 3 is create a Google Drive. So following on from the purchase tracker, which you can also do in Google Sheets if you like, or you've got the Excel alternative. I would say create a Google Drive or an Excel, OneDrive, whatever they're called. Create the drive there so that you can basically put all of your files into folders. So I've got a folder personally. This was a revolutionary for me. I didn't learn this till about 4 or 5 months in. Create a folder for different areas of your business, but specifically an accounting one with the bookkeeping and things like that, and then actually condense it into monthly folders so that you can have all of your receipts even before you're VAT registered, because obviously they're very important when you're VAT registered, but this is more for non-VAT registered, this video. You still want to collect all your receipts so that you can reconcile them, or your accountant can reconcile them, send them off to them, or do it yourself at the end of the year so that you can fully understand, if the government owes you money or you owe them money. And also, it's another reason why it's so important to have every single one of them receipts. It's just in case if Amazon asks you for proof, where did you buy this item from? They want a receipt. Sometimes they want proof. Otherwise, they can actually deactivate your account. So there's 2 really good reasons to have one there. So there we go. What do you think of that one, Timer? Oh.
Everything you said, plus the compliance as well. So in UK, when you're doing a business, you need to make sure your invoices, your books are kept safe for at least 6 years. HMRC can knock your door at any point and ask you for the last 6 years worth of transactions, and they can pinpoint, say, at this day you made this purchase from a bank account. Can you show us an invoice for that? And if you don't provide them, then they can literally penalize you by giving you penalties and fines because you claimed something which you shouldn't have because you don't have evidence for it. So having this Google Drive, having everything in line, especially for the 6 years, is definitely one of the best tips you can get. And you need to make sure you do that, not only for good bookkeeping, but compliance as well.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about that. I knew that, but I forgot about that reason as well. Obviously, HMRC, the government can reach out to you at any time, within the 6 years to get these documents. So, absolutely paramount that you get that Google Drive set up, keep everything in monthly folders, be ahead of the game. So if they did reach out to you, or if Amazon reached out to you, or inevitably your accountant or you doing your books at the end of the year, you can just pluck these documents out rather than it just being a shambles. And trust me, it can be a shambles, especially doing something like retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, where you've got thousands potentially of purchases at the end of the year. So that was tip number 3, everyone. Make sure you set up a Google Drive, get it all organized nice and early. Tip number 4 is a sole trader visa limited company. Now, what's best? What are the pros and cons of each to start with when you're starting out in business on Amazon FBA? Personally, I went the limited company route, and there's pros and cons to each. But the reason for me was because I'd heard a few horror stories regarding people switching over their Amazon account from a sole trader to a limited company after they'd started getting sales. Now, this was just my experience from what I heard. I have heard that a lot of people don't have issues, so that's probably not a good enough reason, for everyone not to set up from a limited company to start with. I know there's a lot of benefits starting from a sole trader, but I thought I'll pass this question over to Timer just to tell you the pros and cons of each so that you can make a detailed decision yourself depending on your personal circumstances. So there we go, Tom.
Yeah, look, when you're trading in the UK, you have 2 options, as you said, sole trader or limited company. They both are really good in their specific circumstances, and they can be damaging as well. So if you're just starting and you have not had a business activity before and you don't know if your business is going to go big, if it's going to be successful, and you're just on a trial mode, self-assessment is good. Because the good things about self-assessment, it's very private. None of your information goes out to public. It's simple and straightforward. You don't have many deadlines. You don't have many paperwork. You just have to do your self-assessment income tax on 31st of January of the year. You don't have to hire people to make sure that they are correctly following the FRS 102, or the standards. You just need to make sure your profit and loss is in place and your bookkeeping is done on those end. And more or less, in a total sense, it's just a very simple and straightforward way. So for example, the first £1,000 that you make, you don't even need to do anything at all. You don't need to register for self-assessment as well, but you only need to do that if you go above the first £1,000. But compare that to a limited company. A limited company can be very public. Any transactions, your business profit and loss or balance sheet can go to the company's house website, which is available for public, and they can view, what your balances are on your accounts. But the reason limited company is much more better than a sole trader is it's limited by liability. What that means is you personally are not held responsible for anything that goes wrong, because your company is a separate legal entity. So for example, if you end up borrowing a lot of money and you can't repay them, under sole trader, you personally will be held responsible. Your cars, your home will be, but under limited company, it won't be. So there's pros and cons that can help you decide, but depend on whichever part of your business you are, you can decide which is better for you.
Okay, cool. And just on that note as well, Tom, I know that there's a question regarding obviously it's an £86,000, 85,000, whatever one it is, threshold before you have to pay VAT and start paying VAT, per year, that threshold. And correct me if I'm wrong. If you start as a sole trader and reach the 85, you can then set up a limited company and that starts again, so that you don't have to go VAT registered as soon. Is that correct? That's probably quite a good reason to start as sole trader as well, isn't it?
Yes, so the £85,000 threshold is for your sales. Once you have reached the £85,000 threshold and then you convert to a limited company, then it goes as a going concern, which means that you have to register the limited company as VAT registered as well from day one. But if you're like doing 30, 40, 50 and you're thinking you might hit, and if you convert then obviously the threshold starts over. So it depends as well if you have met the threshold or not. If you haven't, then yes, the switchover should work for you.
Okay, cool. So ultimately, guys, it is up to you. It depends how much money you've got to invest as well. How fast you're going to grow it? How serious you're about it? How much do you know about it? Is it definitely something you're going to be doing in a few years' time? That's the decision I made. I was 100%, once again, this was just my decision. I was also 100% in on this, and I knew that I was going to make it work, and ultimately I did. So I decided to do a limited company just so it was a bit more organized from the start from my personal perspective. But it is up to you. It is up to everyone, watching in your own personal circumstances. As I say, pros and cons to both. Tip number 5, I would say, look, if you're going to do this, then what 100% what you need to do, even if you're not setting up a business, you need to set up a separate bank account for all your transactions if you are going to keep it as a sole trader. Now, this is a very basic first-hand tip, just like the purchase tracker that I would say you need to do. Otherwise, what you're going to be doing at the end of the year is going through all your personal documents and your dividing it up with your accountant at the end of the year. This one was business, this one was personal, this one was business, this one was personal, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare for your accountant, especially if you haven't got an accountant, you're doing it yourself. So set up a separate bank account, and if you use a credit card, then once again, correct me if I'm wrong, Timer, but you can use that personal credit card for business. But I would say make sure you're just using it for business. Once again, don't mix and match that one. Just give it to the business essentially, but even if it's still in your personal name. The same applies for business as well. If you're going to set up a business account, then obviously set up a business account and set up a credit card for that business as well. Make sure just everything's aligned nicely so that you haven't got different transactions for personal and business getting confused. So I'm sure there's something you want to say on that, Timer, but that's my take on it.
No, I completely agree. Look, as you said, it makes life of an accountant a lot more easier. But again, it makes your life a lot more easier because you are not juggling between different accounts. One simple account, anything in it is business related. All you need to do is just categorize it, and then you're done with the accounts. If you use your personal accounts, you end up doing the whole work of categorizing it and recategorizing it into different platforms. And also, if you have your personal accounts being used for your business, your accountant will probably end up seeing your personal transactions. You don't want that. You want to keep your personal life private, right? So just focus on it completely separately and make sure they both are distributed equally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And then this brings me on to the next question, which you may be wondering whilst watching this, is when's the right time to get an accountant? So I've put this video together to help everyone watching. There's I'm not trying to sell my accountant here. Obviously, I do use Awesome myself. That's why I thought it'd be good to get Timer on the call, because he's the senior accountant at Awesome. So no matter what you decide to do, I thought we would just cover this topic, whether, when is the right time to get an accountant, and things like that. So I would say, just once again, I can only give you my personal opinion here, that I can pass it over to Timer. So if you're really worried about the accounts and you find it all confusing and really overwhelming, I would say although it's a big cost, sometimes it's not when you're just starting out, but it can be, especially when you get VAT registered, a monthly cost. But if you're really worried and you just want everything organized from the start, you want that advice, you want to know what you can claim and things like that, you want to get all the tips and advice, I would say, get one early. Because they will save you a lot of time and money on a lot of things, potentially thousands, if you're doing things wrong. But if you are very organized and you don't think that it's an issue for you, you're on top of the Google Drive, the purchase tracker, maybe you've got some software, accounting software, which is included with most accountants anyway. But if you've got some yourself, then, and you're pretty on top of it, and yourself, and you're going to stay on top of it, then I would say you can probably, this is a personal scenario, depending on how much you put into the business. But for example, for me, I didn't have to get an accountant to about 8 to 10 months in, because I kept myself organized, and then I got to the stage where I could pass it over to an accountant. Now, once again, this is a personal basis, depends how much money you're putting in. That's just a rough idea. But obviously, the other thing is, if you're going to be VAT registered before that time, then I would say you need at least a month or 2 months of having an accountant to help you get organized before you hit the VAT threshold. So yeah, just to summarize, if you're really worried, get it early. If not, you could probably wait 8 to 10 months or until a couple of months before you go VAT registered, if you can see it incoming. What do you think about that, Timer? Obviously, it's you've got more experience with this.
Yeah, one thing I would say is, look, regardless of how much long you wait, at the end of the day, if you're going to an accountant to get your files done, the accountant will charge you the full money, right? Yeah. So rather than deciding what's the most appropriate time, I think for you, best time is to decide when are you willing to get that cash out, right? So for example, if you want to pay on monthly basis, then even getting an accountant from day one will work out much cheaper than if you go to someone at the very last minute of your accounts, because they will charge you premium to do that accounts in one go, whereas someone doing on regular basis will help you. But again, the decision as you're saying, you need to make is, when do you start for the accountant, right? And as you said, once you're really into the business and your business is doing well enough to get the accounts done, you need it then, and especially before the VAT, because VAT can get really complicated. So yeah, if you want, and especially nowadays, accountants are quite different to the traditional way accounting was done. It's just do the books, do the taxes, and you're done. Now accountants are getting a lot more involved in seeing your numbers, providing you with the numbers to make those decisions, like supplies and stuff. So if you can find someone who can provide you that value, then get an early accountant to help you with your business rather than just doing your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Following on from that, I would say tip number 7 for me was, and this is just a very, very, this is something that I'm seeing pop up over and over again, is just be careful with these online bank accounts. Companies like Monzo, Starling, Tide, things like that. Amazon aren't accepting many of them anymore, if any. I don't know the latest. Some people seem to get their accounts accepted, but most don't, or they're having to create new bank accounts. So I would say, save yourself the time and effort now, although it may take a week or 2 weeks to get the account set up. I mean, personally, I use Barclays, but you can use any high street bank and get a proper bank account set up. We're talking Metro Bank, Barclays, NatWest, things like that. For me, not only do I trust them more, it's basically just because Amazon like you to use a proper bank account. You know, I personally set up a Tide account, and then I realised that Amazon didn't accept it, and I had to then delay my sales process and wait for the bank account to set up. So that was just a random sort of tip number 7 there. Tip number 8 is so if you're with an accountant, then like Awesome, I use, obviously they actually use Bookkeep. They QuickBooks, yeah, that's it. QuickBooks and Xero. So they use them. No, Link My Books and Xero. I think we have them too. They will include that software in the service. So I don't have to worry about it. But if you're not using them, then I would say make sure at least after 2 or 3 months, make sure that you actually use an accounting software if you're not going to use an accountant, just to make sure you're much more on top of these things. And what you will need to do is go back to your purchase tracker and input all of these purchases into that software when you get to that stage, just to make sure that you're not missing anything. The sooner you do that, the better. And then it's going to be a much easier process to hand it over to an accountant later on if you do get an accountant, which I assume 99% of the people on this call will need one, because they're not going to be willing to do e-commerce accounting themselves, because it's quite complex. It just makes it an easier process to hand it over to your accountant at the end. Stay on top of these books. So what's your experience with software, Timer, in your opinion?
Look, I love the new software, especially all of the new software that are coming in. They are very innovative and automating the whole process. So it reduces the work we do a lot. So just to give you an example, before, and the accounting software, you had to literally sit down, look at the invoice, input the date, invoice number, supplier, all of that. Now you just take a copy of it, send it to the software, and the software does the whole thing for you. So it's really advanced, and it's cheaper than before as well. So getting one of those will only help you. As you said, your purchase tracker can be on those accounting softwares. And then all of your sales get linked directly to your accounting software, so you don't have to manually update an Excel sheet. Everything talks to, all the software talk to each other automatically. So definitely, accounting wise, best tip is to get the accounting software.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. I think even like, I haven't got an affiliate link or anything like that for it, but I think, unless I'm wrong, like Xero and things like that, you get like a free month anyway with them. So you may as well just get it and set it all up, and then just test it, just to see, just to get used to it, basically. Tip number 9, get all of your receipts. Here's the thing. So another reason you want to keep all the receipts in these folders, right? On top of that, you also may need to take some pictures of receipts that you're buying personal things on and things like that. So you need to be aware of everything that you can claim back. And this is something that, I've had to ask Timer actually on a call before, as the senior accountant from Awesome. I actually had to ask Timer this before myself, just so I knew exactly what I was claiming. I think it was you, Timer, or someone else. I had to say, what can I actually claim back, and then we had the discussion. So just remember, there's things that you can claim back that you may not think you can claim back. You need to make sure that you're claiming back petrol, storage unit, equipment for your storage unit, sellotape, boxes, a meeting with a supplier if you're doing wholesale and things like that. All these different things, and there's a lot more that could be covered. Just make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're claiming back everything that you can claim back. Otherwise, you're going to be paying possibly hundreds or thousands of pounds at the end of the year that you didn't have to actually pay. So yeah, I'm not sure if anything you want to add to that, Timer.
Yeah, even on that, like you mentioned, you can claim petrol, and you can claim, quite a few other things like, printer you have for printing labels and stuff. So it works really well. And the only thing you have to be careful is that anything that you are doing for the business purposes, any money you're spending is claimable. But there are some things that are claimable, but in a different format. So for example, if you're traveling, rather than petrol, you claim mileage, which almost is the similar, probably better in terms of the actual cost. In terms of client entertainment or supply entertainment, it's, again, you cannot claim the actual receipts, but because you pay it through your business, it goes out as a net effect. So there are things that are straightforward, and there are things that are not. Again, it's always better to just have a communication with your accountant and check what you can. But these small amount can accumulate a lot and reduce your tax bills a lot.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now, tip number 10, everyone, is basically just take the time to organize everything, right? Because otherwise, at the end of the year, I can't say this enough, because I've been through this before I went VAT registered, and that was bad enough, right? make sure that you are organized, or you're going to be doing a lot of legwork later on down the line. So if you don't do some of the stuff I've said in here, if you don't set up the Google Drive, if you don't set up the purchase tracker and things like that, you are going to have to, you could potentially spend a couple of months trying to sort everything out before the deadline. Going over every single transaction. Is it personal? Is it not? Where's the receipt for that? Amazon have asked for a receipt for this. HMRC are going to ask for a receipt for this. I can't claim back the expenses on this. You know, the accountant's getting confused. What can I claim? What can I? It's just going to be all over the place if you don't track this. So just make sure that you take a step back, put in the time now to go through these tips and actually organize everything you're doing, as I say, into drives, into folders, into trackers and things like that, software, whatever you need to use to get the job done. And that's it, everyone. That is the 10 questions. I'm now going to just pass it on to Timer for a minute, just to see if he's got any final tips that he wants to give. So sort of like, you know, a special bonus tips from Timer, if you like, just to see if he's got anything else he wants to add.
Thank you for that, Hayden. So for me, look, as an accountant, one of the big pain points is fixing the books and making sure the books are in order to be submitted for tax and accounting perspective. But the books are now being used in a lot more meaningful way than just filing your tax and account. And as I said before as well, you can use the books to make those sound business decisions. For example, you know, you can do budgeting, you can do forecasting, and you can do cash flow forecasting to actually see where your business will be and how your business can get to that stage. And all of that is only achievable if you're doing your bookkeeping correctly. And to do that, you follow all of the tips that Hayden mentioned, and you make sure your books are in order. Like if you keep a track of all of your suppliers invoices, you can see which of your main suppliers is providing you the best value, and then you can probably ask them to negotiate better. But if without this element, you are literally swimming in a big ocean without any understanding which direction to go to. So make sure your books are in order, make sure your accounting is in order, and use that information for valuable steps rather than just focusing on filing your taxes. And I think that's probably one of the big tips I can give.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and especially like depending if, like, you know, for example, I don't do online advertising anymore. I've just started a brand, so I'm doing private label stuff now. And not only do we want that on Amazon, we want that, you know, from our website, and we want to build that into a proper brand. And one of the things I'm going to have to do when I come to getting investment potentially later on, if I want it, is to actually show all of my books, and they may want to go back years, you know. And how am I going to do that if I don't keep things organized, and if I'm not organized like some of the stuff I said in the video? So for a multitude of reasons, especially if you want to make an exit of the business, if you want to sell the business later on, sell the brand later on, get investors for the business later on, all of this stuff, or just be able to sleep at night with the headspace to know that, you know, you're organized, then yeah, you need to really just take a step back and get everything organized. So anyway, thanks all for watching. I hope you've appreciated them 10 top tips, just accounting for beginners in the sort of first year. Thanks for joining the call, Timer, and I will see you all very soon.
Thank you, Hayden. See you soon.
Bye.